Hello and welcome to the Six Cells podcast. This is Mike Nicholson from Six Cells. Today I'm going to be speaking to Phil Rowley, who is the head of futures at Omnicom Media Group UK. But before I do, a big thank you to the team at Lumen Research, the sponsors of the Six Cells podcast. For those that don't know, Lumen Research are an eye-tracking technology company that are helping brands to plan, buy, measure and optimize towards real human attention. So thanks to the team at Lumen and welcome, Phil.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Welcome back onto the podcast.
Thank you.
It's
nice
changed a little bit since you were last here.
Indeed, you've had an upgrade, it's fair to say.
Just a tad, yeah. The Zoom is long behind us now, and
Indeed.
Studio based here in London. So welcome. It's good
Thank
to
you very
see you
much.
in the flesh, as it were.
Indeed.
So I've got to ask, what does a head of futures at a media agency group do?
So I think our task really is to prepare our brands for the future. And that might involve thinking about answering questions like, what does the next 5 to 10 years business in tech, in culture look like? How do I get into X, where X is any innovative technology that's currently taking up their attention or their consciousness? But more importantly, because the future can seem distant or intangible, or if it's positioned incorrectly, almost like science fiction, that can be a bit of a barrier. So what we do is we bring the future into the present. We say, if you want to prepare for the next year, for the next decade, this is what you would need to do today and in the now. So it's very much about understanding big macro trends, not only in media, but in tech and in culture and in society and economics, and finding, I suppose, the route into potential solutions that we can bring to the fore over the next decade, but starting when they get back to their desks on Monday morning. It's very much about preparing for the future.
Okay, got it. A big event at the end of each year, Slush.
Yes.
I know you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it last time we spoke, but I've slept since then, so I can't remember exactly. What is Slush? That's probably one of the events that people haven't necessarily heard of.
Indeed, and one of the things that we say is not only is it the best tech conference you've never heard of, we also think it's one of the best kept secrets in marketing. And it's essentially a startup conference. It's in Finland every year, in Helsinki, and it attracts over 5,000 venture capitalists who between them have about 3 trillion in euros to spend. But it's unlike other tech conferences, which tends to be a bit more about consumer technologies that you might see in the shops in 12 to 18 months. It's about big planetary scale problems and little startups that are solving for those in the now, again, to prepare for that next decade. Now, if you're a brand or you're a marketer, you might say, do I need to worry about that now? Is that something that's pertinent to how I buy my TV and my outdoor? And the answer is, ultimately, yes, because what I think that conference does is it points towards the way things are going for the consumer ultimately, because all those startups are solutions to the kind of thing that a consumer would want solved over the next decade. So I like to think it's like a techno-social compass, and from it, as I think we're one of the only media agencies that go there, I might be wrong, but I certainly didn't encounter anybody else, we reverse engineer some really big principles for the way that we think brands will need to interact with their customers and their consumers over the next 10 years based on those startup technological solutions that we see that have sprung up out of what is predicted to be the needs of people over the next decade. And they're all laid out in a big exhibition, like a giant laser lit hangar. It's very, very cool, actually. It's the way I describe it is like if say something like CES is Glastonbury, Slush is more like some really, really achingly cool techno festival in Berlin or something, with like dry ice and lasers and really, really interesting future-facing progressive frontier tech on display.
Got it. Okay. Sounds fun. I don't think you'll be the only media agency there next year after that sort of ringing endorsement. I think it might start getting busier.
Yes, indeed.
So a lot of people like to go to events and learn some stuff and come back and then relax, but no, not for you. No. You write a fairly robust report after you've come back from Slush. So could you tell us about that report? That's
right. So every year we write a report that again translates what we've seen into some actions in the now for our clients. And so the report, this is our third report, and it's called Close to the Edge 2.0. And again, it breaks down and what we saw there into 5 categories or 5 themes. We're really at pains not to point out that they're trends, actually. I mean, one of the things that and there's nothing wrong with trends, but I always liken reports that are based on, that use trends as the sort of central mechanism. Trends for me are like fireworks. They go off, everybody goes, ooh, ah, and they burst in the sky, and then they're gone, and nobody remembers them. They're transient. But the things that we see at Slush year after year after year are more like themes, and I liken that. If trends are fireworks, I think themes are more like the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis. These are huge celestial tectonic movements over time. And I think going year after year after year, we see the same thing, but evolved and shifted, and the tint has slightly moved. And so this year we have 5 themes which summarize what I think the startup community sees as the priorities for the next decade. And I think it's important that brands know that, yeah.
Okay, so one of those, one of the chapters, if we call it that, in your report was media fusions and how technology is going to shape the way we look at media and content distribution. So talk to us a little bit about that, if you would.
So I think the thing to say about media fusions is that it is about the collision or the sort of kaleidoscopic smashing together of media channels. It's pertinent to what you and I do, actually, in the sense that maybe traditionally some people are still thinking in terms of the outdoor, the TV ad, the digital as channels. And I think what media fusions, some of the startups that we saw there show at this cross-pollination of different media channels. And I'll come on to list a couple in a minute. Why it's interesting is I think that what you want to think about when you think about the future of media is more, I suppose, surfaces and objects and a tapestry of canvases all melded together that can carry your advertising message. And I also think that means that what we're saying to our brands is you should think of your content as being atomized rather than thinking, what's the TV ad? What's the outdoor ad? You and I already are talking in a podcast, that's a video at the same time. There's a great micro example of how media is having to be a solid and a liquid and a gas simultaneously because, as we'll probably come on to talk about, for instance, artificial intelligence can move and shift one format to another so easily now that you can't just stick to one channel. Everything will be a mini multi-channel franchise instantly. So an example, or 2 or 3 examples of that we saw, is we saw a company called T-Play, T-I-P-L-A-Y, that are turning the screens into charging electric vehicles into gaming consoles. So the idea is, if you are in a vehicle and you are pulling up to the services or the gas station, as the Americans would say, and you plug in your car to your supercharger, perhaps old school, you might have gone to a shop, gone to the toilet. There'd probably be some phone cover shop next door to a kind of a one-arm bandit kind of machine, and a couple of supermarkets. That is being considered gasoline thinking, I've heard this called now. And actually, what this company envisages is that you'll stay in your car and while it charges and actually play games on that car. You will turn your car into an entertainment center with your phones as the controllers for the game that is on the EV screen. The screen now is becoming a huge part of EVs for navigation, but also as the sort of central, what would you call it? Like the iPad, for want of a better word.
I know, yeah.
But that's in most electric vehicles. Now, the sat nav, the camera, all of that stuff is a games console with your mobile phone.
I think I went a bit too far in the future there. When it was sci-fi, like the windscreen turns into a TV.
Yeah. Patent it now.
I will. Yeah. Can we write that down?
Write it down. So the idea is that, again, even your car is a centre for messaging and media and entertainment. That was one example of a company we saw there. We also saw a company called Treeply. Treepli. And what they were doing is understanding that influencers are going to be a bigger part of the media mix moving forwards, but were conscious that the way that you could monetize and put e-commerce layers on top or besides or integrate into influencers was something that was perhaps a little bit that needed a bit of an acceleration. And so what Treeply do is that they have a e-commerce layer behind travel influencers that allow third-party travel companies to bid algorithmically to supply the elements of the holiday that are similar to what that influencer has just showcased, all ensconced within a single native button that would appear on social media. So again, it's that collision of influencer, social media and e-commerce, but seamless. Okay. But with an algorithmic SEO funnel style back end bidding to provide the elements that the travel influencer might have showcased. And then another example finally was a really nascent startup called Game Actor that wanted to create a social media channel based around gaming. Now that's nothing new. Obviously there's Discord and there is social media which you can find niche verticals within TikTok for gaming. But the way they positioned themselves is they said they wanted to be to gaming what LinkedIn is to business. So there was a whole heap of data about people's performance in games, their accolades, their scores, their particular style of play, the genre of play, which would link together certain people of similar performance or like-minded in terms of the genre, which I don't think is perhaps as granular. It's a really granular solution. And across all of that, the assumption that we're taking is that the shortcut, I say, is that the future is layers and the future is players. That's the way that we've positioned that, which is we've got to think more in a fuzzy way in terms of the way that we we deliver messaging within our channels. And we've also got to think in terms of our creative and our messaging fitting into these granular and niche gaps much more easily. Now we have all of this fantastic granular data on the way that we can message our customers. The overall takeaway is that this idea of, and I know that for years we've not thought just in terms of single channels. There's always been some cross-pollination and some horizontal consistency across our messaging, but it's going to get even more kaleidoscopic, even more messy in terms of the way that we navigate all of these different channels.
Is that a big challenge for the way that brands are set up currently? Because things tend to be quite siloed, right? And indeed, even within a media agency, there's digital teams and then there's VOD teams and then there's outdoor teams and there's TV teams. If we need to have this fuzzy thinking and omnichannel, you might call it, or maybe there's one step further than omnichannel. If everything is basically going to be an ad or an opportunity to communicate, then do we need to basically change the way that our companies operate?
I think that if we do, that will happen organically and over time. I suspect, of course, agencies have, the fact that we have digital departments and digital didn't really exist 30 years ago shows that the advertising agency is able to adapt to new forms of media and new forms of channel. I wouldn't want to predict whether that was imminent, but certainly I think that the idea of being able to blur the lines between silos is never a bad thing in agencies, and certainly multi-channel and omni-channel solutions that we are currently building and that agencies currently have is only going to get more important as that fuzziness increases. Yes.
Yeah, you gave the micro example of this podcast as being an audio podcast, but also with video.
Yeah.
But you take it a step further, it could also be watched on a mobile or a desktop or CTV. And so what a weird brief this would be, but imagine if Omnicom were given a brief, I want you to reach people that watch the Six Cells podcast. There's mobile, desktop,
yes,
display, video, yes, CTV. There's a whole range of just off this little room, yes, this one conversation.
Yes.
So is that kind of a very small example of what you're talking about? Is basically a central idea that can basically live in lots of different places?
I think so. I mean, one of the things that and again, it would totally rely on the brief is my caveat, because it might be that we find out that our audience doesn't perhaps listen to the podcast as much as they watch the video, and if we have a visual asset, then of course that we want to push the visual asset. But then the counter to that is, well, shouldn't everything have the ability to just flow into these different channels? And the answer is potentially that's what you're going to have to get to, a stage where the concept or the messaging is so malleable at the center that if you decide that it needs to be a solid and a liquid, a gas at the moment, that you can effect that transformation with ease to answer the specifics of the brief. Yes.
Okay. Cool. So moving on then to accelerated business brains and how AI can help us reduce waste, work smarter, more efficiently. What did you learn at Slush there?
So we saw quite a few companies that were selling the idea of giving your company a proprietary business brain. So an AI that would essentially be a centralizing, organizing force of all of the data that existed across your company and all of the documents. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, Mike, where you're pretty organized on your files and folders and you haven't got any untitled docs or any PDFs that are perhaps unnamed. But even the most organized among us, I still find it difficult to find a particular piece of information that I'm looking for. I can't remember where I've saved it. And sometimes the search bar just simply doesn't work when you're looking for a particular thing. The idea behind this idea of an accelerated business brain is a company AI that ingests all the documentation you've ever created for your company, but it is safe and secure and proprietary, because if you're using something that's free and on the internet and you are using, say, a chat or a Perplexity to search through that document, there are some issues that you need to be aware of in terms of privacy and confidentiality, but this is a walled garden, and it essentially will provide you with a single articulatable, what you hope would be very reliable, dependable answer based on a single question that you need to find across all the millions of documents that exist in your company. I saw some statistic recently that said professionals spend half their time searching for documents.
Yeah.
The average time it takes to find the thing you're searching for is 18 minutes. I mean, if you're searching for 3 documents, that's nearly an hour, right? Searching for documents. And something like the average person spends 4.3 hours a week waiting on information from other people. So if I said, Mike, can you have that document, that spreadsheet with all those costs on, can you send it to me? And you don't send it to me. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. It's just about AI used for company efficiency. And I know that obviously there's a lot of chat at the moment about how AI is going to change creativity and challenge the idea of what art is and all of these other contentious issues. But I think the one that's going under the radar is the idea of administration, because it's not sexy to talk about, right? We always said that AI would affect business and media in 3 ways: creation, administration, and recommendation. The recommendation is obviously the algorithms, and that's nothing new. We've obviously been using AI and algorithms for a very long time. But that administrative element, I think, is the one that's undersold. The idea that you can ask a question and get it back straight away and put that into your email straight away. I would love that.
Yeah.
And that's what those companies are about. Like, hire us and we will build it for you. Now, I'm not suggesting for one second that they have the monopoly on that idea. I'm sure there are many companies watching this right now that are working on their own little brain inside their own company that knows all its secrets and that can assist and turbocharge its employees. But it's still a really important accelerator that I think people aren't talking about as much.
Yeah. So trust is a big word here, isn't it? And obviously hallucinations, a word that's come to the fore with AI, mainly Gen AI, easy for me to say. But with ChatGPT, you can build your own custom ChatGPT instance to and train it to do certain things. And if you read the small print, it says that it doesn't train its overall data on that. That's basically private. Now, now you have to trust, is that robust? Is that enough of a walled garden for us to put our sensitive data in there? But I couldn't agree with you more that I find that creating content with Gen AI is not quite where I would like it to be. I don't think it's quite as good as it can be, and it just writes something quite matter of fact, which is clearly wrong. But you have to know it's wrong, otherwise that can just go out and like goodness knows what will happen. But being able to look through large amounts of data to find, what did Phil tell me last time on the podcast about media fusions? I can't remember, I'm human. It was 2 years ago, I've slept since then. But I've got the transcript of that podcast and I just ask it and it goes immediately to that bit and says, Phil said this. Yeah. That's a half an hour saved.
Absolutely. And that's the way that I think that we'll increasingly think about AI in the context of business, which is it's a second brain. Yeah. It will remember the things that you won't remember, but it will also be able to retrieve that information far better than you can. Yeah. And in that regard, I think it's going to be a huge game changer, but in a way that's perhaps less talked about.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, we're coming up on 100 episodes of the podcast. Imagine if I could just have, thank you very much. Imagine if they were all just in one place, like Spotify they are at the moment, and I could just say with an AI overlay, what have I learned in the last 100 episodes about marketing effectiveness? And it just looks at everything and comes back, well, Rory Sutherland said this and Matt Stockbridge said this. And you go, amazing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Exactly.
And it's only using data that I fed it through the episode, so it's not hallucinating because it's just literally just retrieving information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It is. So, stamina for society. I can't speak today, Phil. I didn't sleep very well last night, to be fair.
As someone that's
I'm going to put my teeth back in.
As someone that's presented that a number of times, I honestly think I should have called it something different because I stammer over stamina for sustainability.
Thank you. Let's talk about that.
So let's talk about stamina for sustainability. Yes, yeah. Well, I've had to pronounce it a lot of times. I really shouldn't have called it that. So, I mean, there's a big theme in Slush every year of sustainability because, again, it's this planetary scale solutions that you see on display. And I think it's honest enough, or the startups are honest enough at Slush, not to assume that there is a green bullet for sustainability and that all we need to do is invent technology X and that's it, we're solved. It's all about this sort of green war of attrition, small incremental improvements, compound interest over time. And I think everybody is doing their bit. And so we saw some really interesting companies that were putting in what you might call modest, sustainable, eco-conscious solutions, but that in tandem, or I should say in congregation, could make a huge difference to certain industries. So one of the ones that I saw that I just thought was just a brilliant idea, and again, it's not flashy, but you just think that's a brilliant little niche solution, was something called Arctic farming. And what Arctic farming are, whenever you see people talk about the future and they imagine some urban cityscape in the year 2040 or 2050, and you see skyscrapers and flying cars and self-driving vehicles, you often see vertical farms. And it's an idea that's often been considered by urban planners and futurists, this idea that you have something like a cross between a skyscraper and a greenhouse, where you have all your food grown. I mean, we're in central London right now, literally 2 minutes down the road in a gigantic climate-controlled greenhouse. But of course, these are intensely expensive, very, very difficult. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been really any scaling or scaled solution that's really disrupted the market. What Arctic farming do is they build tiny vertical farms, almost that you would have in your house next to your refrigerator or your washing machine. And essentially, it's like a cross between a greenhouse and a vending machine that has really clever control over the natural gases that promote growth of plants. And they allow restaurants to grow their own food literally on site, without grow bags, without fertilizer, just with an intense and optimized mix of gases, essentially. And so when you eat something on your plate and you say, well, how far has this come? What is the food miles of this? You would say, well, it's literally there. Look, you can see it was grown right there. And it's that I think is really nice. Their ambition is to get to the point where you have restaurants have one of these, like they have a dishwasher, or they have an air conditioning unit, or they have any form of, what's the word I'm looking for, standardized restaurant style material, restaurant technology. At the moment, it only does herbs and leaves. But they are obviously hoping within the next decade, they are again hoping to progress to, I don't know, tomatoes, pineapples, whatever. And it might sound like a small contribution, but actually, when you scale that up, the idea of having no food miles and food grown locally and not using precious land, I think it's a really interesting window into some of the potential solutions we could see from a sustainability point of view.
I've never heard of that. That's really interesting. What are the health benefits or not of cooking in a essentially a greenhouse inside your house with gases? Is it as healthy as growing it outside in the sun with the rain? And
That, unfortunately, I'm not a biologist or a horticulturalist, so I would not want to venture an opinion lest it be incorrect. But my instinct, as somebody who is not an expert, is that I think, given its climate-controlled conditions, I would hope that it would be as healthy as. If you're optimizing growth, you're probably optimizing some form of health of the plant. But that is, that they would have to answer that. So they were one startup. There was another startup that I would say is a little bit more homegrown, but I really like the idea, which is a startup from Lithuania called Tingit, T-I-N-G-IT. And they were like a cross between Etsy and Airtasker, if you know both of those platforms. So what happens is, if you want something mended, rather than just throw it away, because we are now at a stage in our society where we have more obsolescence and more waste than ever before, you send a video of the repair or the breakage or the tear or whatever to an army of pre-approved online makers, fixers, seamstresses, menders, and they will quote and say, I can fix that. Yeah, I'll put a new strap on that. Oh, that you don't need to throw that away. And then you send them the item and then they send it you back repaired, which is a really nice idea. And again, you say, well, how does that affect brands? What's the relevance? Well, I think that we're seeing the rise of re-commerce as e-commerce. This idea that certain brands can have secondary markets for their own product, but as long as they're officially ensconced within the brand ecosystem, you can do a lot for sustainability by recycling and reselling and mending and reselling your own products. And that's the general principle that I would take for that. Make, do, and mend was something that you used to say in the war, but I think it's equally applicable today as well.
So almost like a white labeled version of this platform for diesel jeans, for example. So if you buy a pair of diesel jeans, you send them back as many times as you need to through their lifetime and they'll get fixed and sent back to you.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Cynical head on. I love the idea. Cynical head on. How will the brand don't want their product to last forever, do they? Because they want you to buy a new pair of diesel jeans. Other jeans are available. On
paper, yes. It depends on how serious they take their obligations. There are brands that do embrace that idea of fixing things.
I must admit, Bose are very good at that. I don't know if you've ever been a Bose customer. I took my noise-cancelling headphones back to Regent Street, expecting them to ask me to buy a new pair,
yes.
and they didn't ask for a receipt or anything like that. They looked at it and they went away and then they just basically fixed it for me, like for free, and said, there you go. And I was like, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
That is good, because then, I mean, there's obviously some kind of customer value in just being so benevolent and being so helpful.
Well, I'm telling you and whoever else is listening.
And it's on this. Exactly. So, well, there's a brilliant example. Yeah. So again, all we're saying is that brands, there is room for you to, answer some of your sustainable obligations in this fashion. And I think it's a really nice idea.
I could see that in fashion. I could see that actually being these are third generation jeans. That could actually be a badge of honor. Like these is like antique, or we used to have distressed clothes, didn't we? Do you remember? Like the fatigued.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So maybe that's a new thing coming back.
Yeah.
These 200 years old. These diesels. They've been repaired 50 times.
Yeah.
They were worn by a previous king.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. But what I like about the general principle, Mike, is that this idea, obviously, sustainability initiatives from brands are laudable and right, but it's just to remind everybody that this is even though it seems counterintuitive, this is a tortoise, not a hairstyle race, which I know that seems counterintuitive because surely we're running out of time. But there is no green bullet. There is no, we're just not going to just knock this out with one punch. It's got to be supported through lots of little tiny incremental solutions. And that's exactly what we saw there. Yeah, very cool. Back to AI, augmented humans, much easier to say than stamina for sustainability. Well, now you've got it. Brilliant. Well done. Augmented humans, perhaps the most far-reaching and futuristic theme that we discovered. I think you might want to get used to hearing this idea if you've not heard it already, or this phrase, which is AIoT. So that's IoT, Internet of Things, and AI smashed together. The idea that you can use AI to improve and optimize and augment your biology, your physical performance and your mental performance as well. Now, we're not quite at the stage where we are jacking into the matrix, so to speak, or if you're a sci-fi fan, the neuromancer style, plugging straight into your brain into a computer. But we are seeing the rise of startups that use AI to essentially measure and understand more about your body than you do yourself. So we saw a company called Neurobody, and they essentially have a very specific AI-infused or AI-powered wearable that understands your body posture, position, your skeleton, your musculature, and knows why you have a bad back or headaches or pains in your leg or sciatica. I mean, look, we're men of a certain age, you know, this is kind of maybe, well, I'm speak for myself, might be familiar, and it essentially uses its artificial intelligence in conjunction with, let's say, a smart television, and will show you the correct posture for you to model your body into the correct way to sit, stand, and move your body. And it even has programs for gamers versus office workers. So there's obviously some kind of specific injury or degradation you can give yourself, whether you are playing on a PlayStation or whatever, versus if you're typing on a computer. So we spoke to them. We also spoke to a company called HCOM, which is a slightly different tack. This is perhaps less, should we say, seemingly a bit more frivolous, but might have more implications for brands, which is, I've spoken to HCOM at Slush before, and they do, I don't know the technical number, but something like 16K screens or something, like crystal clear, massive, mega, ultra HD walls. But what they've done this time is they have produced a wearable that will track your body vitals and your signals coming up from your body to provide a visual and audio and olfactory accompaniment that reflects your internal state on that wall. So it's essentially taking what you're feeling, your mood, your demeanor, and representing it in ultra high definition on a wall. Also, it can do the opposite way around and guide your mood. So it has something like a base of 15 smells that it can use to combine, to synthesize, to give you the smell of X or Y, and use music, which is AI generated, and visuals, which are AI generated, all to either calm you down or to get you pepped up based on the signals that it knows that you are feeling or undergoing at the moment. I think that's got interesting implications for hotels, for retail, and, you know, sleep. For sleep, brilliant. For sleep, that's great. You know, I can imagine like a sleep app finding a way to jack into that wall.
How many beats per minute do you need to go from where you are to where you need to be? Yeah. Over what period of time? What light, colour? You know, all of that. Yeah.
If you've ever seen Prometheus, the Alien prequel, there is a scene where, because they're on a spaceship essentially for years and years and years on the way to the planet Prometheus, they have a wall which shows, you know, deserts and trees and streams and mountains in startling clarity, in accordance with, you know, to try and, what's the word I'm looking for, offset the isolation of being in deep space for years at a time. We're actually moving towards that, except whilst we're not in deep space for years, if we've had a particularly bad day, then that mood wall, but of stunning crystal clarity, is something which I think that we might increasingly see.
I'd like the ocean. Just like coming to shore, but with the sound, so it sounds like you're actually there, and it's crystal clear, so you can see it.
And then
something very soothing about the ocean.
If they were doing the smells as well, Mike, then there would be a bit of salt, maybe a bit of seagull noise, maybe the smell of, I don't know,
where do I sign up?
Wispy barbecue in the background or something. Nice.
Yeah, I love that. So last point we wanted to talk about today is trust by design. It's another AI one. I've got questions around this, and I think we all have. We touched upon it earlier with Gen AI. Sometimes it creates something that's completely wrong. The first time I introduced a friend of mine that I play football with to ChatGPT, he'd never heard of it, and I explained what it was. He's a Queen's Park Rangers fan, and so I asked it to give a summary of the season for QPR, and it was all wrong. Like it was better than the season they were having, which was. slightly cruel. It's like, we're nowhere near that high up in the league, mate. But it was so believable because if you didn't know the data points, you'd think, well, it's come up with that immediately, and it looks totally plausible.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. So I think that's a problem because people will create content in order to fill pages with SEO-friendly content. They won't care so much about the quality control of that. That looks right, whack it up. And we could end up with and then the AI is then looking at that page in the future to get more information to come back to then, it's like
cyclical and self-referential,
like feeding on its own exhaust fumes.
Yes,
in a way. So, so as AI becomes more embedded in our lives, how do we factor in the trust element, both in terms of can we trust what we see and hear anymore? Is it real? And can we trust AI to do the things that we hope to do with it?
Well, indeed, and hence the title of that last theme, which is Trust by Design, the idea that you have to purposefully bake in solutions at source in order to restore trust. And you're right about that. I think there's two things really. I mean, we've obviously got to be mindful of protecting against inauthentic content, but we've also got to ensure that there are frameworks in place and that we as brands are being ethical and moral in the way that we use AI. And I think that is something that's not that difficult to achieve. I mean, we already have financial targets and we already have environmental and sustainability targets. And I think that there may be protocols brought in that that all society and all business and all industry must have a certain level of adherence to ensure that they are playing with a straight bat, to use a slightly tortured analogy. Some of the companies we saw there offered glimpses as to how that might work. So we talked to a company called Gaia, which was a multidisciplinary team of AI enthusiasts and academics and technologists that were producing these ethical and moral frameworks backed up by legal suggestions, and said, here's a kit essentially for you to pick up and templatize to demonstrate your willingness to play by the rules or use your AI in the correct way. Make sure that the sources of your data are legitimate, to make sure that you are using data ethically and morally and properly. And it's true that legal frameworks always lag behind. I think I heard recently that seatbelts weren't made compulsory in this country until 1983, right? Which is mind-blowing when you think about it. And yet cars had been on the road for 40 or 50 years. So there is always a tendency for laws to lag behind. Although I have to say the recent chats around AI and creativity, and certainly some announcements about the willingness to look at this from a legal standpoint, suggest that we are beginning to catch up. But it is going to be incumbent upon brands and businesses to avail themselves of some frameworks and behaviours to reassure customers and consumers that the use of AI is being used properly.
But that's the use of AI, right? But we've got to trust the AI tech itself not to get it wrong.
That's true as well, and that is a real technical challenge in the sense that, to your QPR point, obviously machines are capable of making mistakes, and you'll notice if you use any ChatGPT front end, there will be a disclaimer saying ChatGPT or Perplexity or whoever makes mistakes, Gemini makes mistakes, please check the data. And in that sense, it goes back to my point about accelerated business brains, is that we can't rely 100% on these machines. And in the same way as you said that you would check Gen AI for its mistakes because you're using a human to understand what the machine got wrong, I think the overall takeout is that we need to work in tandem with machines. We are the check on them, ultimately. And I don't see any reason why that couldn't be a really nice solution moving forward. But there is one thing that I wanted to point out, and that is there was one startup there that didn't use AI, but was brilliant in the way that it tackled the idea of trust, which had nothing to do with inauthentic content, nothing to do with Gen AI or data or privacy. It was called Koll, K-O-L-L. And what it did is it is a system that allows you to signal the reason for your phone call in a floating message as you call. And the reason why that's interesting is there's plenty of evidence to suggest that nobody's picking up their phone anymore if they don't know who it is, or even if they know who it is, they don't know why they are calling. And this idea of saying, Mike, I'm calling to rearrange this, or I know that you're busy, you're in a meeting, but I really need to talk to you now because there's a decision that we need to make. Why I like it is because it's just such a simple solution, and it's nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It's just human on human issue. Like, I am calling for this reason, so please pick up. And that's actually where the trust really needs to be strengthened between humans, because ultimately humans are the ones that are in charge of creating the AI. Humans are the ones who are going to be managing and using AI. So it's about interhuman trust. Ultimately, I think that's the thing that we have to attempt to address first.
Okay, we're not using it yet, but I'm already going to tell you who's going to ruin that.
Who?
Call centres. They're going to use that in all sorts of ways. Oh, it's your doctor calling, and all of those old tricks that they do, and then you pick up, and it's oh no, it's Mr. Proctor. Sorry, you must have got it wrong.
Mr. Proctor.
Yeah.
Mr. Proctor, the doctor.
Yeah.
But then I go back to the point that I made, is it's incumbent upon business to be ethical and moral in the way that they use that technology. And I think if you did get caught ringing somebody and pretending that you were the doctor, but you were actually from a vendor trying to get through, I think that would be a massive abuse of trust, and that would really highlight nefarious practices that would backfire on you.
Yeah, so big brands probably wouldn't do that. Let's be clear, and I love it. I'm not talking down on it, but if you have the number of lead generation agencies reach out to you that I do, you know that they'll do anything that possible in order to try and get you to engage with them. So they'll be the people that will be having the volume of outreach, which will kill the trust, and it'll kill it for everyone, unfortunately.
It could do, but I suppose what they're doing is defining themselves by eschewing or ignoring a new form of etiquette, which makes them even lower on the food chain, doesn't it?
Yeah, they'll still do it. Cool. So overall, then, your new report, is it? I can put it in the show notes, as they say, a link for the download. So if you were to try and summarise all of that and sort of bring it together, what do you? You said something about players and people and players, was it?
Well, that was from Media Fusions. I would say this. Okay, so just briefly going, the Media Fusions thing is about a collision and a hybridisation of channels. The Accelerated Business Brains thing is about working in tandem with machines. The sustainability element is about everybody pulling together at the same time in incremental improvements. The Augmented Humans is about us accepting that integration between machines and humans from an AIoT perspective is coming down the line. And the Trust by Design thing is about human on human interaction. What goes like a red thread through all of those is this idea of unity, the idea of actually getting used to partnerships with the solutions over the next decade. And in a world of division, which is, I think, what we're experiencing now, the idea of coming together and the idea of working in tandem and partnership, both with each other and machines, to help solve some of our human on human interactions, that is the key, and that is the summary to the next decade in technology.
Love it. So from an AI point of view, how are Omnicom or you individually using AI at the moment? How is it making your lives easier?
So we are, I suppose it's in two ways. I mean, again, internally, I think that we're looking at ways of enhancing our performance. Yeah. We're looking at ways of enhancing what we do from a media perspective, and also we're talking to our clients about how they could potentially use it within their campaigns. I wouldn't want to discuss any more than that right now, but it is something that we are extremely conscious of, and we're looking to use it internally to improve our processes, and externally in order to make clients work, answering the questions that they have about AI. Because everybody, I mean, this goes beyond advertising, right? And it goes beyond industry. It made its way into the BBC News when DeepSeek happened. It was literally the headline news on the BBC. So this is an issue for our era, and it's an issue for the globe in 2025. So of course, as a company, a multinational company, we're across it, and we want to work with it.
I know some media agency groups have moved not away from, but expanded or diversified, I suppose, away from pure play media to more business transformation and consulting at a higher level than just marketing. Is that something that Omnicom are doing as well? Are you trying to be helping the CEO as well as the CMO within businesses? Because AI kind of goes across everything, right?
I think, I hate to use a buzzword, but yeah, holistic would be the right way, I think, to view it, because ultimately, AI is a general purpose technology. It's like electricity. It's not a trend. It's not a firework. I think it's more like the aurora. So it affects everything, the way that the printing press affected everything. So therefore, because AI by its definition touches everything, I think we would view it as a general purpose technology. So we would be talking to anybody and everybody that we can about its effects on what they do. There's a Silicon Valley luminary called Andrew Ng who said AI is the new electricity, and I think that's a really good way to think about it. This is not like the metaverse or NFTs. I think that this is much more broader than that, and so yes, we'll talk to anybody that will listen about how this might affect their business, their consumers, everything.
You can tell me to shut up if you can't answer this question, but it's just come into my head. What sort of things, how are the questions that you get from clients changing over time? Because we've just touched upon there that a lot of things are changing in the marketplace with AI, with fragmentation of media, with cars becoming gaming consoles essentially. So everything's changing. Are the questions that you're being asked changing along with that?
I don't think so. I think they're largely what is it and how do we use it, and I think that will be true for a very long time. I don't think we are going to land on a solution that is fully formed immediately. In the same way as we're still discovering new ways to do outdoor, we're still finding new ways to do TV, we're still finding new ways to do digital. I don't think that AI's influence on our media is going to reach some kind of zenith and go no further. I think we'll always be talking to our clients about how to use it and what impact it has for their business.
And from your experience, do you see any particular department or person within an organisation leading this, or are the marketing department figuring out how to use AI for marketing, and the product team are figuring out how to use AI for product, or does it tend to go up and then across and then down again? So how does AI help our whole business, or is it kind of siloed into departments?
I would say that everybody that works in the advertising industry is aware of it, and everybody is interested in it, and everybody is pursuing their own lines of inquiry. But at the same time, we probably do have a centralising opinion or a centralising way of looking at it, and that's what will be unfolding over the next indefinitely. Because as I said, I think it's here to stay.
But within a brand, would you say that the legal department are going to take the lead, or the technical department are going to take the lead, or the end user, if you like, in marketing or product or sales, or different for every brand? Or I could not give you a blanket imposition for that. I think it's horses for courses. I think it depends on what you want it for, how you'll use it, when you'll need it. I think that there is a broad sense that it's important, but I think everybody will have their own independent view on the best way to use it and who will lead it. Okay. So just to finish off then, so looking at your report, obviously the first thing to do, take away from this, is read the report.
Yep.
What actionable insights are you advising clients or CMOs or whoever it might be to sort of take away from that report and to actually put into action?
The biggest actionable insight is that at the beginning of every year, somebody wants a trends report on the next 12 months. And that just seems such an arbitrary time frame. The next decade, the next decade of time starts today. You can just draw the line at any point and have an arbitrary time band to examine for. It's
like meetings have to be an hour, right? Because that's what.
Brilliant example. Yeah. Well, do they? No, they don't.
No.
And so my overall takeout that I've tried to explain in this report is that you can start thinking about the next 10 years today. You really can. There's nothing that says you have to wait for January before you can think about the next year. And there's nothing that says you have to think about the next 10 years. At any point, you can start thinking about it today. So long-term planning and just at least knowing what's coming down the track so that you can begin to maneuver, that's the key takeaway. We don't have to look at the next year. We can look at the next 10 years, but you can start working on it today.
Phil, lovely. Nice way to finish, I think. Thanks so much for being on the podcast again. I hope you enjoyed your new surroundings.
Thank you very much indeed. Cheers.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.